Hey, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. For the last couple of weeks, I've been working on a story about the origins of the Carte Visite. It's going to appear in the annual for the Daguerrean Society. It's been a great project. It's been a daunting project, but I've had a wonderful time digging into books, newspapers, finding all these little tidbits about the Carte de Visite and how it made its way from Paris and France to London, across England, and then jumping the Atlantic Ocean to America. Some very little bits of interesting information I've been finding along the way. I've got an entire folder filled with PDF files. Today, I found two interesting references. One of them is it's a very well-known quote. If you are a student of Civil War photography or just generally about the history of photography and cartes de visite, I'm sure you have heard this particular quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes, the great thinker, the man of letters in the 19th century. He said about card photographs, as everybody knows, they've become the social currency, the sentimental greenbacks of civilization. You see this quote over and over again in books, beginning in the 20th century until today. What you often don't see is before the quote and after the quote, in context, the larger essay, which is called Doings of the Sunbeam, and it appeared in Atlantic Monthly in July of 1863. By the way, a consequential month, Gettysburg and Vicksburg. And here is Oliver Wendell Holmes talking about all the rage in these photographs, these tiny baseball card-sized photographs. But in context, he is comparing the carte de visite to stereoviews. And for those of you who are not in the know, stereoviews are these stereoscopic images that were two images on a longish rectangular card. You would drop them into a viewer and get a 3D view 15 degrees apart. So a nifty little photograph that had a device, the stereoscope, that accompanied it. Well, guess what? Our good friend Holmes was talking about the carte de visite in context to these stereoviews. So I'm going to give you a little bit before and after the quote, just to give you a sense of what Holmes was talking about. The preface here is he's just talked about stereoviews, and he's talked about some series that have caught his attention recently, including a series of 12 of, I think, a city in Paris. So here's the quote about social currency of cartes de visite in that slightly larger context. Holmes says, quote, "We have found very few new stereoscopic pictures in the market for the last year or two. This is not so much owing to the increased expense of importing foreign views as to the greater popularity of card portraits, which, as everybody knows, have become the social currency, the sentimental greenbacks of civilization within a very recent period. We, who have exhausted our terms of admiration in describing the stereoscopic picture, will not quarrel with the common taste which prefers the card portrait. The last is the cheapest, the most portable, requires no machine to look at it with, can be seen by several persons at the same time, in short, has all the popular elements. Many care little for the wonders of the world brought before their eyes by the stereoscope. All love to see the faces of their friends." This is social media of the 1860s. This is Facebook. Holmes has just described Facebook, looking at pictures of your friends, looking at all kinds of related activities with your friends. And he's basically making a comparison between the stereoviews and the cartes de visite. Now, that same year, Another individual, a photographer, in fact, his name is Nathan G. Burgess. He had written a book, The Photograph Manual, a practical treatise containing the carte de visite process and the method of taking stereoscopic pictures. It had been published in numerous editions, and this is the 1863 edition. He makes the same comparison as Holmes, and I want to get that quote for you of what he says. So here is Burgess from his book, The Photograph Manual, making a similar connection. So here we go. Quote, "The stereoscopic pictures have become a permanent feature in photography. They are now considered as one of the most beautiful and perhaps wonderful productions of this fascinating art. The cartes de visite, which were a consequence of the stereoscope and not an original discovery, are soon destined to rival the far-famed daguerreotype, which indeed they most resemble. Made in their greatest perfection, they are truly the most perfect production of the art at the present day. Arranged in photographic albums, they grace the parlors of all who profess to keep pace with the fashions of the hour, and they have almost become the textbook of our personal friends, as indeed they are when well filled with beautiful specimens of the arts." I love that quote, especially the last part, that idea they have almost become the textbook of our personal friends. Here's Burgess. He's describing social media. He's also describing Facebook, and he's also noting the connection to the stereoscope. Now, if you're a close listener, there's a couple of takeaways here that are particularly interesting to me. If you consider what Burgess is saying, especially the part about the carte de visite is not an original discovery, the Stereoviews came first. In essence, Burgess is dismissing the carte de visite as a fad. I think he's talking about a whole group of photographers who are eager to cling to daguerreotypes and the other hard plate images, the tintypes and the ambrotypes, or the larger sized albumen prints or the salt prints. These two classifications, these formats, they were aimed at a much smaller audience who had more discretionary income. Very different than the carte de visite that was cheap, affordable, and appealed to everyone. I think that some of these photographers who had built their business around more lucrative clients probably took some solace in the belief, the false belief, that the rapid spread of the carte de visite was really just a fad and it would soon subside. On the flip side, those guys, those early adopters of the carte de visite, those who jumped into it early in 1855 in Paris and England, up through 1858, 59, and then in America. I think that those individuals, they saw opportunity in the public interest in carte de visite. They were maybe a little less interested in the high-end clientele, or they didn't have as many high-paying customers as some of the big studios. And so they jumped in to the carte de visite and probably benefited by it in a pretty big way. So there you have it. Today's episode, thinking about stereoviews, stereoscopes, and carte de visite photography in 1863. We'll see you soon on another episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Until then, take care.